we on the Éarte?
Yes!
At last, yes we are, because that is the name of the show. Welcome on back. I am Sam DeLev, and this is our Children of Éarte after show, where I hunt for spoilers like so many shinies in a Scary Lady Sparkle Horde. With me tonight to provide said secrets are Lauren Urban, Jen Kretchmer, and Adam Bradford. Thank you so much for joining me. So please say hello and introduce yourself to the people.
Adam,
Who's going first? There we go.
Jen, kick it off.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said Adam. Hi, hello, I am Jen Kretchmer. You can find me on socials as @DreamWisp. You can find me streaming on the interwebs as DreamWisp Jen. I do a bunch of different things. Soon, at some point in the next couple of days, I'll be posting the link to the, I got to host the first ever hybrid SAG WGA disabled creators picket, and it went amazingly, and I'm very proud of it. So that'll be coming up. I'll be posting it on everything. And also, you can check out Dreams and Machines, which is out now and awesome. And I wrote on that. So yes, and normally I play Maeve, Mark and Flynn, your friendly neighborhood troublemaker. Yeah, that set. I
had it this time.
Yay! It's really fun. It's got machines and dreams and things. Yes.
Speaking of someone who is an absolute dream, Lauren.
Oh, thank you. I'm Lauren Urban. I'm the content manager over at Idle Champions of the Forgotten Realms. You can find me on many of the socials as Oba Lauren. I mean, I'm not playing Neb tonight, but she's around here somewhere. I'm sure she'll come out, somewhere.
And that leaves me, right?
Yeah. Around here somewhere.
Yeah, there we go. I am Adam Bradford. I am the CDO at Demiplane. We have many, many things going on. My sleep schedule will attest to that. But yeah, we're doing Vampire the Masquerade character tools right now. Like that's the big thing that we're working on alongside Marvel Multiverse RPG character tools. So here in the next couple of months, you're going to get to dig into all of that. But we also have Pathfinder Nexus, which has character tools in beta right now. Pathfinder is just a really big game, so we had to kind of beta with that one. But Avatar Legends is available, so you can create characters for Avatar Legends. And today we released the early access, which so that means you can pick things up in our digital reader and the game compendium for 5e Nexus, which has some great third-party content, including Critical Role, Darrington Press, Tal'Dorei Reborn is up there. We've got 2 of the Tome of Beasts from Kobold Press. And we have the Monster Grimoire from Ghostfire. So that's just a few of the starting publishers that we have on 5e Nexus. That will grow over time. So check that out at 5enexus.com. And normally I am playing Silas Sorrell. I almost said Jordan because that used to be his name. But if you're watching at this point, spoilers are way out the window at this stage. But yes, Silas Sorrell, your dimensionally displaced magical superfan.
And before I gather the spoilers from out the window and into my hot little hands, I must first recognize tonight's sponsors, Idle Champions of the Forgotten Realms, wherein we are giving away 2 codes, and you can type !code in chat for a free Electrum chest in game, Die Hard Dice, purveyors of clicky clacky math rocks, and supporters of excellent alliteration. Use code Éarte at checkout for a 10% discount, and we will be doing a giveaway in chat during the stream, as well as Sirenscape, because epic games require epic music, such as DAA, EDD, ADD, ED. And with that test of musical oral skills out of the way, on with our show with a reminder that you too can ask our guest questions like, what Mount Doom volcano would you throw an amulet into if you actually do go back for it someday? By asking your question with question in all caps in chat. And while Demibot handles that, I will handle the first question. Because canonically, y'all, we know from the Vaults and Vagabonds episode that Silas is not only a deep V&V nerd, but he watches actual plays, including Alendra from Heroes of the Plains, and I need to know, does that mean that Adam Bradford, Hope LaVelle, Jen Kretchmer, and Lauren Urban, among others, are also canonical in Children of Éarte? And if so, what does Silas think of them?
I mean, I think ultimately you are going to have to ask the Cosmic GM, for a final ruling on that. But I think that what I can say for my part in the genesis of this, little show, our early discussions were that, we wanted things to be as familiar as possible to the world that we actually live in, and then try to imagine what if something like D&D or V&V or anything else, what if that truly existed in reality, and kind of frame it that way. So I wouldn't say that it is necessarily us, but maybe variants of us, perhaps, walking around in the world of Children of Éarte, or in Éarte, I guess I can say. We've got a version of Jen and Lauren and myself and Hope and Alicia walking around in that world. And, who knows? They may be watching something in their world that is like Children of Éarte, and then it's just going to keep going in a big giant loop, kind of when you join a video call and share your screen and you forget to change it to the other tab.
I would like to call dibs on being the evil twin.
You gotta have a goatee.
I can make that happen.
Yeah.
Mirror Universe of Éarte, coming to you soon. Not actually coming to you. But in terms of special episodes, can you tell us a little bit about how that one came to pass? Because it's maybe my favorite thing ever, watching players play characters who play characters. How did we get this magic to actually happen on our screens?
So, it's something we've had in the back pocket for a while that I talked to Deb about pretty early on. But, honestly, the reason it happened when it did is because we are a cast full of people doing a whole lot of different things. And we go out of our way to try to pre-record episodes. For whatever reason, we've got to miss, one of the weeks. And we just happened to get up and against a scheduling conflict that just wasn't going to work. And unfortunately, Hope had to miss out on that one. And so we kind of, like I said, had it in the back pocket that, if the story supported it enough, that we weren't in the middle of some giant combat, for instance, if we were in a quiet enough place that we could try to do something like that. And that was inspired by some of my favorite episodes of virtually any media that I consume. So many things that I love have that D&D episodes. So thinking back to Freaks and Geeks, which is just a classic epic one. Community, of course, had that kind of thing. There are so many animated shows, like the new Voltron reboot had something in it. The 2012 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had an episode that was essentially the turtles participating in some kind of D&D-esque or LARP-esque thing. So it was just inspired by that concept of getting these characters together to play something, and kind of this combining of all of our favorite things,
including our cast members. Very much some of my favorite people. But Silas wasn't the only one who had some familiarity with V&V. Maeve, who played brilliantly naive and pretended she'd never roll dice like that. Okay, so why did she sandbag? And where did she learn to play so well?
So as I was building that out, I thought it would be interesting for Maeve to sort of slow play that. But she learned because she traveled around so much as a kid, as an army brat. So learning on bases. It was a thing that she just did, and that was portable, and that she could kind of find a group almost anywhere and play. And so that was part of why she was so familiar with it. And I thought it would just be really funny to have Maeve be just a hardcore min-maxer, just to do the most optimized, broken, just totally busted build. And the funniest thing is I was doing another stream the next day with another level 5 character that I was creating, and the difference in those two characters was just, they were so disproportionate comparatively. But it was so much fun building out Tabby and adding that piece to Maeve's backstory, and creating that part of her story, and thinking about too what the implications of that being one of her hobbies would be.
Do you think she had good early V&V experiences then?
I think so. I think she started very young. I think she was always the little kid at the table. Like young, maybe too young to really understand the rules. And so I think it's been kind of in her blood for a long time. And I think when she was young, she wasn't very good at it. She didn't quite understand. So then it became, okay, well, I'm going to learn everything and be better at it than you, which is where some of the min-maxing came from. So I think that's just a little bit of her personality. She doesn't like moderation. She very much goes to extremes on things, and she doesn't like feeling inferior. So it felt like that would have been the way she would have taken it. But yeah, in my head, very, very small Maeve would have started playing with probably people who were much older than she was.
Playing from a very early age, and yet turning around and being like, but we don't have a table.
Yeah.
How could we play a tabletop role-playing game?
We have no hex mat. We have no figurines. What are we going to do? Just,
you're going to use someone else's dice?
The scandal. I only have one set with me. What am I going to do?
I lost mine in the train.
Right. Yeah. So that was sort of where that thinking came from for her.
Likewise, I did note that although so many of his most precious belongings were back on the train, it was just right there at hand. Enough dice for everyone. How many dice did Silas just have on him, would you estimate?
Well, I mean, legitimately. So again, it made all the sense in the world that, and I'm not trying to, I'm certainly not trying to say that, if you're out there and you're a fan of many things, that you have to like tabletop role-playing games. But there is a massive overlap. People that are into, things that people get very fanatical about out there. There's this propensity to want to participate in whatever the franchise is that you're following, or whatever else. And so tabletop role-playing is such a natural extension of that. And so, of course, Silas, being a fan of so many different things, he's a huge tabletop player. But one of the things that from the very first episode 0, before we even started playing, we have actual inventories on our characters, and it's like, what do you have with you? And the challenge that we had early on was rethinking perhaps classic D&D style items into real world items. And so for some caltrops, Silas has D4s, and so he has just a bunch of D4s. He's used them on one of his old jobs that he did, and so he carries them with him all over the place. And so in the inventory there are like a huge bag of D4s, but then there's a whole other bag of assorted polyhedral dice, and that's been there the whole time. And then also, at least for Silas, and I think everyone else probably keeps up with this more than Adam as a player even does, it's like we understand what is in our backpack, the thing that we carry with with us all the time versus what was on that train. And so, I think that, Silas lost a lot of stuff in the train, including, the stacks of comic books that he had, his autographed Michael Jordan basketball. But the dice are something that he would have close at hand, pretty much no matter what. And so he has, dozens. I mean, it's like the whole Corona bag, kind of like that kind of thing.
Like the Crown Royal.
Yeah. That's what I meant. The Crown Royal bag. Yeah. And so it's like, that kind of thing with all of the different kinds of dice, metal, wood, probably some bone ones in there somewhere. He's a big collector, so he has a lot of dice.
That makes sense. Okay, quick rapid fire for the players. What if you bring dice with you on a daily? What's your walking around number of dice rolling around? Like, how many dice? Or do you live dangerously and not bring dice with you, just around on a daily basis?
I mean, if I have to bring physical, I bring a D20. But I have to admit, I know I have access to digital tools. So I have all of my dice with me at all times because I have a phone. It's been nice.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, I probably have 2 physical sets with me if I have a backpack with me. And then I have 3 different apps with dice, or 4 different apps with dice on my phone. And then I have one on my watch too, just in case. And for anyone who doesn't know, if you have a digital assistant, you can verbally ask your digital assistant to roll your dice for you as well. So anywhere you have that nearby, you can try it out.
How much do you want to bet that there's a significant portion of the population who are watching this right now who just asked their digital assistant in the way that they need to ask to do exactly that? And also,
I'm very pointedly not saying the names of various digital assistants, so everyone's device is not.
Yeah.
That's because you're a kind person.
Okay, Google, roll. Sorry, everybody.
However, yeah, would be.
Yeah, I think for me, I am kind of all over the place with that. If I'm traveling, even if I don't mean to, typically there are at least a couple of sets in the backpack, and I am one of those incredibly light packers. Like military style pack, like I try to get everything into a backpack. You will never see me check a bag, even if I'm going for a long time. And so, they're like tucked away in nooks and crannies of the backpack often. But sometimes I do very intentionally, if I'm going to a convention, intentionally leave all the dice at home to force myself to buy some to have with me when I'm streaming a game at the convention or whatever, because I do like to kind of give myself some of those excuses to buy more, but typically a couple of sets. Yeah.
I have to get more dice. I didn't bring them with me, and I didn't engineer the situation deliberately.
Yeah. That's what I tell my wife anyway. Yeah.
I applaud y'all's self-control.
Oh, but I gotta know, Sam, what do you have on you at any given time?
70. The number is 70. It's 10 sets of 7 polyhedrals, and that's like, unless I know I'm playing a higher level character, I don't have to re-roll any damage dice, which is just my thing. I don't like holding the numbers in my head. Please don't make me. And I love digital. I will have my digital character sheets, and all of those, I simply draw the line in dice roller whenever I can get away with it. I understand it as a randomized function with lovely, lovely math. But I will take my faulty, frail, material math rocks. Die hard dice. But of the people we have here, Lauren, Neb had the least background in V&V, but we did learn she had taken improv. Was that like for a class at school, or like any idea of how Neb ended up in an improv class where she didn't know when she was supposed to speak up? That detail just killed me.
Yeah, so before she got on the train, Neb didn't know what she wanted to do with her life. Which is one of the main reasons that now she has this drive. If it hasn't been obvious so far, she's pretty much focused on what's been going on here because she finally feels that urge to do things, but she didn't know beforehand. And so when she went to college, she did the thing where you take like 3 billion classes here, there, and everywhere, and you get a fine arts degree, and then you go back out into the world and you make donuts with your parents in the bakery. So yeah, I just pictured she's one of those people that every semester filled her schedule like 18, 20 credits of courses because she knew, okay, there's going to be a couple of them that I'm going to drop out of in the first, week or two. So yeah, improv was definitely one of them. I think she probably tried to take a couple of either performing or artistic stuff, and none of it really stuck. So yeah, it was kind of fun to suddenly have her need to pull that out and be spontaneous in a very different way.
Aw. How did she like her experience of playing her paladin? How did your characters like their characters?
Oh, Neb loves Asteria because I've been lucky where I've had the chance to do the person playing a character a couple times now. It's just always so much fun. So for her, it was like, okay, what kind of character is she gonna want to make? And a lot of it was, what am I not right now? And so I made the tankiest tank, the most paladiniest. I have so much armor because that's what she knows she's bad at. So yeah, there were a couple of times in where riding on her horse, just being epic and big, was, she loved it.
Um, I really loved playing Tabby. I kind of want to play Tabby all the time. She's really fun. And I think, like Lauren, I've had a few opportunities to do playing a character, and I've always really struggled with it. I was actually I was really nervous about this. I got very stressed out about it because most of the time, especially when the character I normally play has an accent, trying to do the brain permutations of the accent and what would the character do within the character choices, and but this one actually felt really smooth and fun, and I really enjoyed it. So yeah, I thought it was a ton of fun. And I also I kind of want to play this character just in different opportunities of story, and maybe just play Tabby without Maeve playing Tabby too, just because.
I mean,
So
we
much
have to
fun.
play some more, right? We left off on a cliffhanger, and I'm gonna be
Very
thinking about that
cliffhanger, yeah.
cliffhanger every single night when I
It's
go to
so
sleep
true.
now.
It's so true. Yeah.
Yeah,
Silas
I'm sure the
did do that.
schedule monster will get to us again, and we can come back to it.
We're going to have to. And we had a question about the upcoming cliff counter from Cassius asking what level was the red dragon. We know our adventurers were level 5, but what level was a red dragon, and what would not the V&V characters' chances be of beating it? But what do y'all think the Éarte crew's
Oh yeah,
chances of beating it would be?
that's a layered question. Yeah,
Mhm.
so yeah, it would have been it was just a young red dragon, so it wasn't that bad. I think it's around a CR 8 or 10, somewhere around there. So yeah, it would have been rough for them, but for level 5 characters, it was kind of the equivalent of the big bad of an adventure. And yeah, I think that honestly, at this point in time, the Éarte crew would just steamroll a young red dragon. I genuinely believe that we've gotten to the point where about level 5, some stuff really starts kicking in, and so I think that everybody's been together a little bit more. As long as Fairuza doesn't completely electrify us all, when she loses control of the rage or something in the middle of things, then we probably stand a pretty good chance against that red dragon.
See, I'm on the fence for a couple of reasons. One, I think we would all try to talk to this dragon first. So defeating could mean a couple different things, but like a bunch of us are just going to try to talk this dragon out of whatever is going on, try to hang out with this dragon long enough so that certain druids could learn how to turn into them, even though there's no way that she can. And then, so who knows what happens in that discussion, because there's a couple people in this party who are super persuasive and super deceptive. And then there's one or two people who are just nice to get along with. So you could really it could go in a couple different ways. Also, yeah, young red dragon, and this is me being a DM for a second. It's all about where that breath weapon happens. It's 100%. Where does that, because I'm not going to do the math in my head because it'll make me sad, but if Neb gets on the wrong side of that breath weapon, she's dead.
Well,
It's over,
I will tell you that I am anxiously awaiting this next level, because that's when Silas gets an incredibly good breath weapon neutralizer ability that actually works on groups as well. So, back to the whole, like, hey, if you're around Silas, like you can have some level of safety against that kind of stuff. So, yeah, as long as we don't fight the red dragon until we level up one more time, we're going to stand a much, much better chance.
Duly noted. I won't send the red dragon after you immediately then.
Just one more level.
It also, the red dragons are really smart usually, and red dragons, they're nasty. That's a nasty. They're gnarly, and from a DM perspective, they're really fun to run, but they are vicious. I don't know. I think this one's tricky because as players, I think we have so many DMs in the party that a lot of us would be. I think it would be hard to. We're good players, and we're not terrible about metagaming, but when you hit red dragons and things, it can get tough to not go, I might not stand right in front of it, even though your character might actually be curious and might be persuaded to all group up right in front of it because they're very persuasive, even though we know that's probably not the best idea. So I don't know how we would actually fare against dragon. I think, and it also depends who's running it. Like if Deb's running it, she just has all of the tricks to.
The thing is we would never see a red dragon, just straight up red dragon, like because Deb changes something about whatever the things are, and it keeps players who have done it a long time, like it's not like you can just go and everybody has done this, like sneak a little look into a tab over there on a digital tool and be like, oh yeah, okay, it's immune to this, and like in that kind of, but that goes out the window when a GM knows what they're doing and throws those curveballs like that. So
which also as a DM, I highly recommend finding those ways to twist it, and also the things that Adam, the books that Adam was talking about going on to the portal. I'm very excited about that because I love those books, because experienced players often know the official books but don't know Tome of Beasts and things, and the monsters are so good. They're so much fun to run. So I'm very excited about that for my own purposes. But reflavoring is always a great thing to do, and Deb does it so well. So,
and all to the better in this circumstance, because it isn't metagaming if you have multiple experienced V&V players in your party who would spot a red dragon and would simply know how to handle them.
It is one of those interesting.
Don't.
Yeah, well, it is one of those interesting moments.
Players are like, no, we're go this way, away.
I don't know why hysteria is in the back of my head telling me not to stand in front of the dragon. I feel like, especially when we're talking about something as iconic as a red dragon, and Adam's absolutely right. I don't think we would see just the plain red dragon. Although you never know when, this is one thing that the storybooks got correct from all these other lands. It does become a fun challenge, in my opinion, to make sure that if your character either knows a thing or can figure out a thing, like I think it's fairly fair to say don't stand in front of the dragon very close. I mean, we all know the tales of fire-breathing dragons and all of that.
Yeah.
So I think there's a couple of the obvious things, because then you can kind of lean into the unobvious things of like, everyone knows dragons can fly, but then they don't take the next step of, well, how do I go after it if it's up there? So there's other things you can kind of grab onto that I think are super fun.
Not the dragon. Do not chat. Chat. Do
And I want to
not
be a
grab
dragon
onto the
rider.
dragon.
I've read the
Okay,
Pern
well.
novels. Is this not Pern? Can we do that now?
I mean, we don't know. I mean, that's the great point. We, children of Éarte IRL, know the thing about dragons and tasting good with ketchup.
Mm.
I think there's a fair amount that Éarte kids can simply meta from world. Don't stand in front of a dragon. I think
I
we've
just
got
love
that.
seeing the look on Deb's face every time she presents us with a challenge and we try to talk to it and become its friend. Like
Yeah.
every time, like it's, I mean, she doesn't show any kind of, you know, disdain or anything. That's not what I'm saying, but it's just, it's this bemused look that I've picked up on like every time it happens. Cause she's like,
really?
this is a dangerous, horrible, nightmarish beast that will devour your insides, you know. And then
I would like to be its
well,
friend,
hey,
please.
yeah.
Thank you, Jen, for just calling me out while I'm calling myself out. Yeah, Neb. It's okay. I'm usually looking right at Deb when Neb is walking forward, going, "Hi, I would like to be your friend and learn all about you, but I'm not going to stand directly in front of your muzzle because I know about that."
It's hilarious to me that you think Neb would go down to. You are playing maybe the only druid I know who thinks of themselves as being a mega squishum. You have the wild shape. You have all those extra HSP in your tank, and someday you will learn that you have that extra in you. Because Neb, do you get the impression that Neb knows she has more HSP in that tank?
She does, and she's known for a while. But what happens is, like, if you think about the big giant bird, the gargantuan giant bird,
Big bird.
she was up front trying to talk to it when the fight started. Most of the time when she's up front and is getting squished on before she can wild shape, it's because she's up front trying to talk to something and then rolls really bad on her initiative and goes. So she knows. But it just doesn't always happen in time, and you can't talk to people if you're a moose. So
Yeah, that is the real downside.
that is tough.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah.
But Deb honestly wasn't. Turns out, not the only brilliant GM at the table. Y'all noticed Silas explained the rules of V&V very clearly to beginners, had pre-gens prepped for new players, explained the rules of the world, the conventions of TTRPG, like, y'all, hey, an adventuring hook, please take it. Clearly and concisely, to a degree that I would love to see from all GMs. Just, yes, get above table long enough to tell me to get on the party bus. Love that. Silas could even do the GM trick where he looks at the module that he prepped and in real time cuts down to the chase because 213 is coming, / you know, the episode of the other layer of murder. But like, for someone who intimated that he hadn't really had many opportunities to GM recently and hadn't really gotten to play a lot of V&V with people recently, Adam, how did he get so good? He's really good.
Yeah, that's part of the curse that I know that many people out there who are probably hearing this right now are going to be familiar
Silas
with
is
it.
cursed too.
Yeah. Everybody's cursed. But you know, that forever GM you know, kind of life that we lead. And so just because he hasn't played in a while, you know, he's 50. So you know, it's like he might not have played in a decade, but he played a whole lot back in the day. And so it's kind of like riding a bike. You can just swing back into it, especially when you have to GM as much as that. But one of the things that I've discovered genuinely, and this is Adam talking now and not Silas, but we can apply it in some ways, is that in the last 10 years or so, I've been able to play more than I ever got to play back then, and that has, without any doubt whatsoever, made me a better GM. So like I think that like that concept of the forever game master is something that unfortunately sometimes we can't get out of that. We can't jump off that merry-go-round sometimes because we just don't really have much of a choice. But I would say that if you are stuck on that merry-go-round, try your best to talk those friends into trying it, and some of those kind of things out there, because overall you are going to really learn some new tricks for your bag if you're able to play a little bit in addition to the game mastering. But yeah, Silas
it's the only
did
way
it so
you
much. Yeah, it is. But Silas did it a bunch. Back in the day, and so for him it probably just felt like getting back onto a bicycle.
You as a person, Adam, are so gracious, nigh to the point of self-deprecation, and it's very funny seeing you do that on behalf of Silas just now, because there are plenty of GMs out there who have logged zillions of flight hours who don't GM nearly as well as Silas did. Silas is a great GM.
Well, he loves story. So I will say that one of the things that I've found in common for many of the best game masters that I've been able to play with over the years is just an understanding of story. And maybe I'll get a little bit too lofty here with everything I'm about to say, but story is a primal need for humans. Like I fundamentally believe that we need story to subsist and truly live our lives. And so I think that one of the things about these games that is so great is that it's a way for us to connect to storytelling in a way that is so unique and fresh compared to a lot of the just kind of monotonous dredging of story that we might call story out there sometimes. And that's not a cut on any kind of shows or any, because I do plenty of that too, and you find great stories there, but there's this mass market out there of storytelling that these games a lot of the time can circumvent. And I think that that's something that is in common for all those GMs that have really shown in the past that I've played with. And Silas, at this point in time, to try to get into his mindset, he in his mind is living in a story right now, like a true, real story. And I mean, he honestly believes that he's going to continue to become more powerful. He's going to be a superhero in whatever world he ends up in, and so for him, I think that that's going to come through in trying to introduce his newfound friends to this kind of hobby, because he understands the importance of that. And honestly, with some of the stuff that's gone down in his life, and how isolated he has felt, how lonely he has felt for a decade or two, at this stage, I think that for him, that's why he was so hell bent on making sure that they liked it. it's like making sure, like, hey, I want you to play with me again. This is very important to me. I don't want this to be a one and done thing.
I think that was actually what I was going to bring up, is there was something else that Silas did really, really well, which has been a part of his core character for a while now, which is his joy of being a fan of things. I love being a fan of yours. I love being a fan of comics. I love being a fan of this. And so as a DM, sitting down at the table and being a fan of the other players at the table, And Silas doing that so openly is a huge deal, because there is a lot of whoops, I didn't do the right thing, or I rolled poorly or whatever, and having the person running the game sympathize when you roll a natural 20, having them cheer, little things like that, whatever it is that makes it obvious that while you're putting a challenge together, that you want the players to win, and you want the players to have fun. So seeing Silas be a fan of the other players who also had characters, I think is super crucial.
Well, I think that's where these games teach us something about ourselves, and I have had just so many instances over the years where something happens in a game, and I'm thinking about it 2-3 weeks later, and it just profoundly affected me in some way. And so I think that what was fascinating about that episode, and one of the reasons I'm glad we got to do it, was it allowed, I think that, the other characters could discover something about Silas in that, which, he's not shy about revealing plenty of himself. But then it did allow for, there's something about Maeve, like Silas instantly liked Maeve more. Like when he saw her, how she played the game, and he understood, I would argue, more about like her mindset and personality, because Silas would be the one that has played so much that he's read the books about the different types of gamers, and the psychological profiles of that, and all those kind of things. And so it's like, he discovered something about Maeve. He, probably reaffirmed, and confirmed things about Neb, and even Fairuza in that time. And so I think that that was an interesting chance that we got to see players playing characters, because then it just went a little bit deeper into, hey, this is saying something about these characters at this point. And that's a challenge to play, and you all did just an incredible job at being able to play through that. I mean, it's super pro, everything that everyone did there, but being able to find out about the characters through this silly game is such an epic opportunity.
I know that I've always gotten the sense that you learn so much about someone from who they are in an improvised situation, where after a certain number of hours you can't really hide who you are. And so you all did, I agree, a beautiful job of revealing those characters through a game that is so character revealing for actual people in real life. But I don't want to go through the whole episode without talking about some of the away from table stuff that is going on for all of our characters. For instance, just, to speak of things you know a lot about that your characters maybe don't, we have a musical puzzle ahead of us that, Lauren, you got it so quickly. My head was spinning. And how ready are you to sit on top of your hand, since Neb apparently doesn't have a big musical background?
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting moment. I will admit, I almost had it when we were leaving, and then I spent a couple of extra minutes after the episode panicking and looking at things, because I actually got very distracted thinking it was something else. Well, and I'll say it because it's not this. The Beethoven's Eroica Symphony, the fourth movement. If you go and listen to it, there will be a couple of places. And my mind went down the rabbit hole of like, well, it's Beethoven, and it's, the Eroica, and it's, it's got this and that. And then I was like, no, this makes the most sense. So yeah. I mean, we talked about it afterwards, and Deb, with all of our puzzles, has been very clear that she's a fan of the players just as much as she is of the characters. And yeah, maybe Jen is our resident puzzle expert and can just nail puzzles, but like it's okay if the rest of us get it occasionally. But yeah,
More than
there
okay.
is, yeah, we're gonna do okay. And I think I think Neb's tiny little bit of musical training will come in just enough. So,
I think
but
that
we'll see.
that is one of my favorite things that Deb talks about, is how she's a fan of player. She actually says, sorry for the peek behind this curtain a little bit, but she says she is more of a fan of players than she is of characters, and so I think that that is such an interesting angle, because yes, we are producing a story here that has these characters that we all love, that we know that many of you out there are at least taking a little bit of a shining to, and we appreciate that big time. But at the end of the day, we are playing a game, and we don't actually know what's going to happen in several of these circumstances and everything else. Again, we've played for a while, so sometimes we can have a good guess, but we don't know what's around the next corner. We don't know if we're going to fail, that check or miss on that attack or whatever else. And so I think that remembering that it is a game, and especially with Deborah, any chance she gets reinforcing that she's such a big fan of players. Even Silas. Sorry, spoiler alert. Like, I'm going to keep this super vague, but we had this little weird dream detour for our SDCC episode that hopefully we did finally get files. So I hope that we're going to get that up soon. So we got some files, and if you missed that one, you'll be able to see it. But I'm just going to tell you again, super mild, high level thing. Silas kind of solved something. He solved it in a very Silas way. Like, I want to clarify, like, it was a very Silas way, but again, Deborah rewarded Adam the player in that instance. I think probably more than Silas the character, and so that has been a really great thing, because I think I've made it known on one of these shows before that I am not a fan of puzzles in these games, and most of that is because I have seen them done very badly over the years. I have a little bit of trauma from how badly I know that sounds maybe a little silly, but I really do. Like, someone kind of traumatized me one time with a puzzle, and so I really don't like them at all. And Deborah has very slowly and surely been turning that around for me, because she's really establishing a lot of trust with all of that and everything. And so it's been really remarkable to see that I used to kind of just like sigh and completely disengage when that happened in a game. And I'm finding myself doing that less and less, and actually being kind of interested, at least in most of what's going on here. And I think that really is due to how Deborah has just really reinforced that for us so much as we've been playing.
There's also a kind of a weird tangent, and puzzles kind of highlight it, but there's a lot of situations, especially in a game like this, where something comes up that you can kind of tell, oh, there's a character that's going to nail this for whatever reason. Like, oh, this is a situation that's geared toward this character. This is a puzzle that this specific character should be able to excel at just because of what that character is. And then when you end up in a situation where that's not the case, that can give everybody a lot of freedom to do the thing that maybe you would sit back in another place. Like, we don't have anyone in our group who is like a professional musician. So there's no need to be like, oh, I know what kind of puzzle this is. We're going to let so and so shine in this moment. So it's nice to have that give and take. Like, here's some moments in where we can all boost one person up because they're going to have a chance to really show off their stuff. And then here's another moment in where, oh no, we're all going to work together, make this happen. So.
And I mean, I'll also throw out there that in people's backstories, like, my son right now learned how to read music. Like, I don't actually know, like, I can fake it a little bit, but like, my son like learned how to do it. I am fairly certain at this point that he's 18 years old. I am pretty sure he is never going to be a professional anything in music. And yet, if he came across a puzzle like that in a weird circumstance like this, he can read music, and like, he probably could, get close enough to do it. So I think that, that's one of the great things too, again, playing these games, is we have put so much thought and energy into our backstories to get into the mindset of playing our characters. But there are still things that haven't been revealed. And this being an improvisational game, as we're continuing to work with Deborah as we go on through, we can fill in some of those details of the backstory. And so I even love it, like and again, not saying that this wasn't established beforehand, but Neb had some of that training in the past. I think that we're in a magical place. Inspiration can be striking at various times, and who knows what that means and how that kind of stuff can manifest.
And also knowing now what the answer is and being able to backtrack and put the music part of my brain away for a second, I can see 2 or 3 other ways in where people could solve this without being musically inclined, which is also a hallmark of Deb's puzzle solving, puzzle crafting, is that
Yes.
there's always a couple of avenues you can come at the thing.
True, though, like, we can acknowledge that maybe a thing was gift wrapped for you, Lauren, to let Lauren shine. And, you might notice that the resident puzzle solver, as you put it, immediately went to try to puzzle how to toss the ball to Neb. So maybe this is going to be your moment. And besides, this is a magical place and enhanceability exists. So whatever undergraduate music classes Neb took could be augmented, and you can get the solve that, for what it's worth, y'all, figuring out a tune from the letters of music is a non-trivial thing. And look how fast, Lauren's really surprising absolutely no one. Lauren's really good.
It's like really it's like I have decades of training in this or something.
And you get to see it immediately.
Meanwhile, it all came out for me, and I'm like, yeah, it's Greek to me. I literally don't know what any of that is. If you hummed it or something, I'd be like, oh, I know exactly what that is.
And so it will be in future revealed, but not quite yet. And before we get too far, because we got a little more time for me to wrest answers from you before we wrapped, I wanted to talk a little bit about what we were doing immediately prior, going through Treasure Hoard and some of the items that were received. Y'all have been building up a few different items, both coming into this sparkly hoard, the utility chair / weapons, for instance, and the super fan hat that's gone through a bit of a Pokevolution. But can you talk a little bit about how you approach with Deb magic items? Is there a wish list? Do you get items and simply be surprised by what you get and find ways to put it to use? How have magical items been coming into your characters' lives as players?
It's a bit of a mix of both of those. Deb puts it out there that if there are certain things that we are looking for, we can let her know, and she'll help us, see what happens with that list. Obviously, with her own discretion on those things or ways she might tweak those things. But if there are certain things we're looking for, those are absolutely welcome. And then, in my case, there is a piece of my story that we worked out that I don't know answers to. I have something where I said, this is a mystery. I'm happy to let this be a mystery and let this be something that you have control over. And I am happy to have the magical items reflect that. I am not, I'm happy to let things show up that further that story being uncovered. So for me, and then of course at the very last minute I was like, oh, and I have another idea for something. Literally moments before we went live. But that I think is going to be further down the line. But yeah, so for me this time was very much like I'm happy to be surprised and she had a very cool idea. So
how about the superfan hat?
Yeah, well, the hat. So honestly, yeah, I mean, we'll get behind the scenes here. So the hat was just going to be something that was special to Silas, that he cared about. So, for instance, you know, um, from that first episode or second episode or whenever it was when he got outside on the train, acting like a complete fool. But when he was out there doing that and the hat was lost, before, because Jen and I talked in between sessions, and she's like, "Oh, I'm going to use this," and so again, Adam the player is like, "Oh, that's good," because then Silas, what Silas would have done was he was going to go back inside and grab his other version of the hat. Like he was literally going to have 5 of these hats with him, like in his backpack. And the joke was going to initially be he's going to lose hats all the time, but he's just going to pull the hat, like another version of the hat, because it's playing up on the bunches of money thing that he bought them. And it was going to be some weird thing that he bought them one time for a minor league baseball team that he almost purchased, or, like there was this whole direction that I was going to go that wasn't anywhere as good as it ended up going. And again, that's why we play the game, right? Is to see some of this stuff. So then when I saw Jen, make sure that she grabbed the hat, I'm like, oh, okay, she has shenanigans that she in store here that she wants to do. It really just changed everything. And so there was actually another item that Deb and I had spoken about that was going to kind of be a little bit more of the talisman, if you were, for what was going on with Silas. But then when the hat ended up taking on that much importance, I was like, look, I don't even think the story has room for this other thing we were talking about. Like the hat's it at this point. This makes the most sense. And so I ended up liking it because when everybody sees the new character artwork that's going to debut next week, when everybody sees everything happen next week, you're going to see why I'm very glad of what happened, with the hat and everything there. And so yeah, it's really, really cool. How that evolved with that hat, because that was completely not what was initially slated to happen with the hat, but it was definitely, way, way better than what I initially had in mind.
And Jen kind of nailed it with the, Deb asked us for a shopping list, kind of. And we've kept those shopping lists updated. And it's interesting because you can kind of come at what do you want your magic item to be or do from a couple different angles. And so I think figuring out, okay, is this a chance for something story related? Is this a chance for something character buff related? Is this a thing that I think I'm going to need in the future? That was a lot of fun to go through, and also a little difficult for me because Neb is a character that has a lot of options because of what she is. So I don't need too much, in the sense of like, there's still stuff on my character sheet I haven't touched. There's still abilities I haven't done. There's still spells I haven't done because, those kind of characters get so much to deal with. So, so the thing I went for, we had a very interesting and by we, I mean the whole group had a very interesting conversation about who has access to what things. And I'll leave it at that.
It's actually probably something we should check in about again soon, since so much has happened since that conversation.
Yeah. And I need to have a chat with Deb specifically about, yeah. Bunches of things. All good things. All exciting things. But yes, I think it was fun to see everybody's magic item and how everybody kind of went in a slightly different direction with it. And it was super cool.
Yeah.
And for this party, the real magical item is friendship. But as much as I've missed this, that's all the time we have for tonight. So please, y'all, don't forget to tune in next week to watch our heroes work through that musical puzzle so they can try out for Éarte and Idol. Thank you so much for joining us, Adam, Jen, and Lauren. And real quick, starting in reverse order from introductions, so starting with Adam, tell the good people real quick where they can find you.
Adam Bradford, CDO at Demiplane, and I am still, I guess, on Twitter and have not made it to any of the other places. So you can find me there at Bad I Adam, or you can find me on the Demiplane Discord. That's another place, good place to get me, or the forums. And I stream dev updates on Tuesday mornings at 9 a.m. Pacific.
Lauren?
You can find me a lot of the time on the Codename Entertainment Twitch channel. I'm on several different of the shows there, and some of the ones that I'm not on, I'm producing. So come on over to twitch.tv/C&E Games, and at any given time, I'm there doing something. But if you want to see me doing more D&D in front of the camera on Sundays at 4 p.m. Pacific, I am rolling with the D4 crew, playing my cleric Orkira, trying to keep them alive, and we're a real high level. So yeah, it's gonna be fun.
And I am Jen Kretchmer. You can find me on most socials as @DreamWisp. And I stream on here as DreamWisp Jen, on here meaning on Twitch. And yeah, that's me.
Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. And until next time, we're going off the Éarte.